Form W-9. Reverend December 2014. Department of the Treasury Internal Revenue Service. Request for taxpayer identification number and certification. Give form to the requester. Do not send to the IRS. 1 Name, as shown on your income tax return. Name is required on this line, do not leave this line blank. 2 Business name/disregarded entity name, if different from above. 3 Check appropriate box for federal tax classification, check only one of the following 7 boxes. Individual/sole proprietor or C corporation, S corporation, partnership, trust/estate, single member LLC. Limited liability company. Enter the tax classification, C equals C corporation, S equals S corporation, P equals partnership. Note: for a single member LLC that is disregarded, do not check LLC, check the appropriate box in the line above for the tax classification of the single member owner. Other, see instructions. For exemptions, codes apply only to certain entities, not individuals, see instructions on page 3. Exempt payee code, if any. Exemption from Fatca reporting code, if any. Applies to accounts maintained outside the U.S. 5 Address, number, street, and apartment or suite no. Requester's name and address, optional. 6 City, state, and zip code. 7 List account number, S, here, optional. Taxpayer identification number, TIN. Enter your TIN in the appropriate box. The TIN provided must match the name given on line 1 to avoid backup withholding. For individuals, this is generally your Social Security number, SSN. However, for a resident alien, sole proprietor, or disregarded entity, see the Part I instructions on page 3. For other entities, it is your employer identification number, EIN. If you do not have a number, see how to get a Social Security number. TIN on page 3. Or note: if the account is in more than one name, see the instructions for line 1 and the chart on page 4 for guidelines on whose number to enter. Part 2 Certification. Under penalties of perjury, I certify that 1. The number shown on this form is my correct taxpayer identification number, or I am waiting for a number to be issued to me, and 2. I am not subject to backup withholding because a. I am exempt from backup withholding, or b. I have not been notified by the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, that I am subject to backup withholding as a result of a failure to report all interest or dividends, or c. The IRS has notified me that I am no longer subject to backup withholding, and 3. I am a U.S. citizen or other U.S. person, defined below, and 4. The Fatca code, S, entered on this form, if any, indicating that I am exempt from Fatca reporting is correct. Certification instructions. You must cross out item 2 above if you have been notified by the IRS that you are currently subject to backup withholding because you have failed to report all interest and dividends on your tax return. For real estate transactions, item 2 does not apply. For mortgage interest paid, acquisition or abandonment of secured property, cancellation of debt, contributions to an individual retirement arrangement, IRA, and generally, payments other than interest and dividends, you are not required to sign the certification, but you must provide your correct TIN. See the instructions on page 3. General instructions. Section references are to the Internal Revenue Code unless otherwise noted. Future developments. Information about developments affecting Form W-9, such as legislation enacted after we release it, is at www.irs.gov/FW9. Purpose of Form. An individual or entity, Form W-9 requester, who is required to file an information return with the IRS must obtain your correct taxpayer identification number, TIN, which may be your Social Security number, SSN, Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, ITIN, Adoption Taxpayer Identification Number, AIDN, or Employer Identification Number, EIN, to report on an information return the amount paid to you, or other amount reportable on an information return. Examples of information returns include, but are not limited to, the following. Form 1099 int, interest earned or paid. Form 1099 div, dividends, including those from stocks or mutual funds. Form 1099 miscellaneous, various types of income, prizes, awards, or gross proceeds. Form 1099b, stock or mutual fund sales and certain other transactions by brokers. Form 1099s, proceeds from real estate transactions. Form 1099k, merchant card and third-party network transactions. Form 1098, home mortgage interest, 1098e, student loan interest, 1098t, tuition. Form 1099c, cancelled debt. Form 1099a, acquisition or abandonment of secured property. Use Form W-9 only if you are a U.S. person, including a resident alien, to provide your correct TIN. If you do not return Form W-9 to the requester with a TIN, you might be subject to backup withholding. See what is backup withholding? On page 2. By signing the filled-out form, you 1. Certify that the TIN you are giving is correct, or you are waiting for a number to be issued. 2. Certify that you are not subject to backup withholding, or 3. Claim exemption from backup withholding if you are a U.S. exempt payee. If applicable, you are also certifying that as a U.S. person, your allocable share of any partnership income from a U.S. trade or business is not subject to the withholding tax on foreign partners' share of effectively connected income, and 4. Certify that Fatca code, S, entered on this form, if any, indicating that you are exempt from the Fatca reporting, is correct. See what is Fatca reporting? On page 2 for further information. Cat. No 10231X Form W-9, Reverend December 2014. Note. If you are a U.S. person and a requester gives you a form other than Form W-9 to request your TIN, you must use the requester's form if it is substantially similar to this Form W-9. Definition of a U.S. person. For federal tax purposes, you are considered a U.S. person if you are an individual who is a U.S. citizen or U.S. resident alien. A partnership, corporation, company, or association created or organized in the United States or under the laws of the United States. An estate, other than a foreign estate, or a domestic trust, as defined in Regulations Section 301.7701-7. Special rules for partnerships. Partnerships that conduct a trade or business in the United States are generally required to pay a withholding tax under Section 1446 on any foreign partner's share of effectively connected taxable income from such business. Further, in certain cases where a Form W-9 has not been received, the rules under Section 1446 require a partnership to presume that a partner is a foreign person, and pay the Section 1446 withholding tax. Therefore, if you are a U.S. person that is a partner in a partnership conducting a trade or business in the United States, provide Form W-9 to the partnership to establish your U.S. status and avoid Section 1446 withholding on your share of partnership income. In the cases below, the following person must give Form W-9 to the partnership for purposes of establishing its U.S. status and avoiding withholding on its allocable share of net income from the partnership conducting a trade or business in the United States. In the case of a disregarded entity with a U.S. owner, the U.S. owner of the disregarded entity and not the entity. In the case of a grantor trust with a U.S. grantor or other U.S. owner, generally, the U.S. grantor or other U.S. owner of the grantor trust and not the trust, and in the case of a U.S. trust, other than a grantor trust, the U.S. trust, other than a grantor trust, and not the beneficiaries of the trust. Foreign person. If you are a foreign person or the U.S. branch of a foreign bank that has elected to be treated as a U.S. person, do not use Form W-9. Instead, use the appropriate Form W-8 or Form 8233, see Publication 515, Withholding of Tax on Non-Resident Aliens and Foreign Entities. Non-resident alien who becomes a resident alien. Generally, only a non-resident alien individual may use the terms of a tax treaty to reduce or eliminate U.S. tax on certain types of income. However, most tax treaties contain a provision known as a saving clause. Exceptions specified in the saving clause may permit an exemption from tax to continue for certain types of income even after the payee has otherwise become a U.S. resident alien for tax purposes. If you are a U.S. resident alien who is relying on an exception contained in the saving clause of a tax treaty to claim an exemption from U.S. tax on certain types of income, you must attach a statement to Form W-9 that specifies the following 5 items. 1. The treaty country. Generally, this must be the same treaty under which you claimed exemption from tax as a non-resident alien. 2. The treaty article addressing the income. 3. The article number, or location, in the tax treaty that contains the saving clause and its exceptions. 4. The type and amount of income that qualifies for the exemption from tax. 5. Sufficient facts to justify the exemption from tax under the terms of the treaty article. Example. Article 20 of the U.S. China Income Tax Treaty allows an exemption from tax for scholarship income received by a Chinese student temporarily present in the United States. Under U.S. law, this student will become a resident alien for tax purposes if his or her stay in the United States exceeds 5 calendar years. However, Paragraph 2 of the First Protocol to the U.S. China Treaty, dated April 30, 1984, allows the provisions of Article 20 to continue to apply even after the Chinese student becomes a resident alien of the United States. A Chinese student who qualifies for this exception, under Paragraph 2 of the First Protocol, and is relying on this exception to claim an exemption from tax on his or her scholarship or fellowship income would attach to Form W-9 a statement that includes the information described above to support that exemption. If you are a non-resident alien or a foreign entity, give the requester the appropriate completed Form W-8 or Form 8233. 1. The IRS tells the requester that you furnished an incorrect TIN. 2. The IRS tells you that you are subject to backup withholding because you did not report all your interest and dividends on your tax return, for reportable interest and dividends only, or 3. You do not certify to the requester that you are not subject to backup withholding under 4 above, for reportable interest and dividend accounts opened after 1983 only. Certain payees and payments are exempt from backup withholding. See Exempt Payee Code on page 3 and the separate instructions for the requester of Form W-9 for more information. Also see special rules for partnerships above. What is Fatca reporting? The Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, Fatca, requires a participating foreign financial institution to report all United States account holders that are specified United States persons. Certain payees are exempt from Fatca reporting. See Exemption from Fatca Reporting Code on page 3 and the instructions for the requester of Form W-9 for more information. Updating your information. You must provide updated information to any person to whom you claim to be an exempt payee if you are no longer an exempt payee and anticipate receiving reportable payments in the future from this person. For example, you may need to provide updated information if you are a C corporation that elects to be an S corporation, or if you no longer are tax exempt. In addition, you must furnish a new Form W-9 if the name or TIN changes for the account, for example, if the grantor of a grantor trust dies. Penalties. Failure to furnish TIN. If you fail to furnish your correct TIN to a requester, you are subject to a penalty of $50 for each such failure unless your failure is due to reasonable cause and not to willful neglect. Civil penalty for false information with respect to withholding. If you make a false statement with no reasonable basis that results in no backup withholding, you are subject to a $500 penalty. Criminal penalty for falsifying information. Willfully falsifying certifications or affirmations may subject you to criminal penalties including fines and/or imprisonment. Misuse of TINs. If the requester discloses or uses TINs in violation of federal law, the requester may be subject to civil and criminal penalties. Specific instructions. Line 1. You must enter one of the following on this line, do not leave this line blank. The name should match the name on your tax return. If this Form W-9 is for a joint account, list first, and then circle, the name of the person or entity whose number you entered in Part I of Form W-9. A. Individual. Generally, enter the name shown on your tax return. If you have changed your last name without informing the Social Security Administration, SSA, of the name change, enter your first name, the last name as shown on your Social Security card, and your new last name. Note: ITIN applicant, enter your individual name as it was entered on your Form W-7 application, line 1A. This should also be the same as the name you entered on the Form 1040/1040A/1040EZ you filed with your application. B. Sole proprietor or single member LLC. Enter your individual name as shown on your 1040/1040A/1040EZ on line 1. You may enter your business, trade, or doing business as, DBA, name on line 2. C. Partnership, LLC that is not a single member LLC, C Corporation, or S Corporation. Enter the entity's name as shown on the entity's tax return on line 1 and any business, trade, or DBA name on line 2. D. Other entities. Enter your name as shown on required U.S. federal tax documents on line 1. This name should match the name shown on the charter or other legal document creating the entity. You may enter any business, trade, or DBA name on line 2. Free PDF preview end. Purchase required to gain total access. Visit www.propmanagementforms.com to purchase Property Management Forms package.